Good day, everybody. My name is Rosalia Badhorse. My Cheyenne name is Me'ayut. I'm from Lame Deer, Montana, and it's good to see you all. I am a student here studying linguistics in the NAMA program at the U of A. Today I'm going to talk about the Tsetsehestahese and So'tao'o, aka Cheyenne language for second language learners. As for my background, I did grow up with Cheyenne-speaking grandparents. They didn't fully teach me the language because they didn't want me to struggle in school. So I do know all these bits and pieces here and there, but I'm not a conversational speaker myself. So I did turn to linguistics thinking it could help me study the language better, and I think it has. So I just want to share what I've learned so far with hopes of helping other second language learners. This is related to some of the research I'm doing for my master's thesis, and this is also my positionality. This is my perspective as a community member in looking at the field of linguistics and Cheyenne language revitalization. The Cheyenne are technically made up of two tribes, the Tsetsehestahese and So'tao'o. These are two mutually intelligible languages with some dialectal differences. Today the government does refer to our language as Cheyenne as like just a general term. It is a part of the Algonquian language family. Some other related languages are Arapaho, Cree, Ojibwa, and etc. There are currently two communities of Cheyenne speakers, one in Montana and the other in Oklahoma. The Northern Cheyenne have a little over 300 speakers, while the Southern Cheyenne have less than 10. For the Cheyenne alphabet, we have 14 letters total, which is different from the English alphabet that has 26 letters. And this is just so you can see what's all there. For any second language learner or newbie to linguistics, I do think it's helpful to know some basic terminology. Here are just a few that I'm highlighting. So linguistics is the scientific study of language, and then within linguistics, there's a subfield called morphology. And morphology is the study of the internal structure of words and individual units of meaning within words, phrases, and sentences. And then within morphology, there is a term called morpheme. A morpheme is the smallest linguistic part of a word that can have meaning. Cheyenne is a polysynthetic language. This basically means that what could be a whole sentence in English could be considered just one word in Cheyenne. This is useful to know because in my personal experience, I always wondered why when I asked how to say something, I would be told that you can't say that, or you can't say just that one word, you have to say something more with it. And so now I finally know why. It's because the language is polysynthetic, and the best way to decipher the language is by looking at the morphemes. So if any of you are a beginner, like you're brand new to the study of linguistics, please note that the hyphens in the Cheyenne language examples here are not separating the syllables. They are separating the morphemes where meaning is encoded in the language. So just keep that in mind. The Cheyenne example here is considered one word and has 5 morphemes or parts to it. One special aspect of this is the verb, which is highlighted in yellow. It's important to note that in Cheyenne, verbs cannot stand on their own as a word. In the English example here, if you look at the word selflessness, it is one word and is made up of 3 morphemes, selflessness. The piece self and less are words that can stand on their own, but ness cannot. Ness has meaning, but it is not a word. This is a similar feature of Cheyenne language. We have suffixes that cannot stand on their own as a word, but they can attach to other morphemes in order to create a word. And also notice that the morphemes must appear in a certain order in order for it to make sense. In the Cheyenne example here, to say the phrase I helped Navista, it is an intransitive phrase that goes pronoun plus verb. To say I helped him or her Navista mo, it is a transitive phrase that goes pronoun plus verb plus object, or in this case an obviative, which we won't go into detail right now. And so please note again, if you mixed around these morphemes like the examples in red, then it just wouldn't make sense. So there is a certain order to this. And one important aspect of these phrases, again, is the verb, which is highlighted in yellow so you can see where it is and how it must always attach to other morphemes. Another special characteristic about Cheyenne language, interestingly enough, is that there is no word order. It can be OVS, VOS, SVO, SOV, VSO, or OSV. It can be any variation, and it seems that there is very little research or explanation of what factors are at play here. So this is definitely an area where more research could be done, but in the meantime, I will point out that although there is no word order, we got to notice that the morphemes in each chunk still follows a certain order. So it's not so random that you can mix just any morpheme around. And so I did highlight the verb in yellow again so that you can see where it is and how its internal structure looks. I want to share the Cheyenne medicine wheel. So my relative, Jenny Parker Seminole, who's a respected elder, told me some years ago in my personal research on beadwork that I need to begin by looking at this. It's just so essential to Cheyenne history and epistemology. Each color represents a cardinal direction, a season, and a stage of life, including the blue around it, which represents the fifth stage and refers to creator in the spiritual realm. And I bring this up because the culture and the language, they do go hand in hand. You can't just study one and not the other. Now, when looking at the language, the most important thing to pay attention to are the verbs. I found this quote in the English Cheyenne Student Dictionary that sums it up pretty good. It says, "The heart of the Cheyenne language is its verb. An entire thought can often be expressed by a single word, which can be called the verb. The Cheyenne verb is made up of smaller parts, morphemes, which have meaning." Now, in looking back at the medicine wheel again, in its simplest form, just the colors, we'll realize that the colors are actually verbs. These phrases, ewokum, ema, eheyof, and so on, these aren't adjectives, these are a state of being. And so now what does this really tell us about the Cheyenne worldview and the way the people talk? That's just something to think about. So now I want to bring up names. Some Cheyenne names are nouns, but a good number of them are also verbs. I think this is a further indication of how essential verbs are in the language to be in a name. So just from a cultural perspective here, I remember when I was growing up, my grandparents always used to tell me that I have to live up to my Indian name, Me'aya, which I did include on this slide. It means stands in sight woman, but a more modern translation might be outstanding woman. They always used to tell me that it's about doing good things in my life that others can look up to. And so some of the names in general have an obvious meaning and some are metaphor, but just knowing this cultural aspect about names, that we have to live up to something, that tells me that we're inherently called to some sort of action or maybe a verb. So just something to think about there. The two names on the top are men's names and the two on the bottom are women's. I did highlight all the morphemes in yellow to show where the verb is. There are additional affixes that commonly attach to verbs, which are also present in these names and are highlighted in blue. The additional item I want to point out is the morpheme highlighted in green on the men's names. So just zooming in on the men's names here, the STSE or st suffix that appears at the end is also commonly found on imperatives or commands that are directed towards one person singular. The examples in the pink box, hemses and taiwishts, show the same STSE suffix. I don't know if that's an actual correlation there between these types of verb phrases or if it's just a coincidence. I just thought I'd throw that out there in this discussion about verbs. So as I mentioned before, the culture and the language go hand in hand. So in my research going forward, I'm really trying to find ways to combine both aspects for second language learners. Here we have an image of a beaded pipe bag and a language worksheet that is inspired by this. Here is how it would work. In this case, we would brainstorm transitive verb phrases and then write out all the possible options into the boxes. For example, nawomo, I saw him or her, and etc. Going forward, I want to reiterate that verbs are the heart of the language, yet I acknowledge that they are complex in the ways they are inflected. Cheyenne is an understudied language, so for me as a community member and second language learner, I'm going to continue what I've been doing. I'm going to continue researching and studying the language, the verbs, and especially in conversations. I'm also going to continue researching ways to teach both the culture and language for second language learners, as they do go hand in hand. And I do welcome any feedback, insight, questions, or suggestions. They are seriously welcomed. And I do want to put out there that I do hope other young Cheyennes will decide to study our language and linguistics, and that maybe we can help each other somewhere down the road. Yeah, Ish, thank you.